All right, thank you all very much for being here on this warm summer evening, and got a lot to talk about as usual. I want to, lest I be a derelict in my gratitude, I want to thank mostly the RBOC for hosting the meeting tonight here in this beautiful air-conditioned room, which I really, really appreciate. And I want to give a special shout out to, obviously, the Linda Vista Annandale Association, which is here. We've gotten some great mailers from you guys, so keep that coming. And the Linda Vista Library Associates have really turned out tonight. They've donated some raffle gifts, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And can we just thank those three organizations for all that they do? Thank you. The library is especially salient because on Monday at our council meeting, we approved putting on the ballot an initiative to retrofit and rebuild the Central Library downtown. And this is something I feel very passionate about. And so many turned out that are here tonight to present comments in support and letters and the like. It's complicated and probably beyond the scope of this meeting, but remember that we have a special parcel tax that we pay in Pasadena to support our library system. So we feel very strongly about libraries in Pasadena. We have the Central Library and then 9 or 10 branches, and there's no place in our city where you can have to walk more than 1 mile to get to a public library. Our public libraries are proximate to our elementary schools, as is the case, of course, with Linda Vista right across the street, the San Rafael right on Nithsdale down the street from that elementary school. It's really, really important. And the parcel tax that supports our library operations, which has passed by a healthy margin every time it's been up and then re-up on the ballot, requires that we have a central library and requires that the Central Library be open 7 days a week. So we really have to do something to move forward with the Central Library renovation and retrofit, since it was red tagged a few years ago for earthquake unsafety. There's a carve out in the parcel tax that says, except for public safety reasons. So if a situation like this comes up, we're fine. But if we don't move forward, we're either going to have to give up the parcel tax and the substantial revenue that would come with that for the libraries, or we could sort of play games and call one of our branch libraries a central library and keep it open 7 days a week. But I personally wouldn't be comfortable with that because it's not really straightforward or forthright. So anyway, long way of saying, please support that amendment to the charter on the ballot, which authorizes an additional increment, to be fair, so that we can fund bonds over many years that would then pay for the retrofit and the rehabilitation and ultimately the reopening of the Central Library. I've talked for many years, and some of you have heard this probably till you're no longer needing of hearing it any longer, but this renaissance that we've been doing in Pasadena, where we rebuilt City Hall, we rebuilt the Civic Auditorium and the Convention Center. We are rebuilding finally the YWCA and preserving that. We've invested in the Rose Bowl, another iconic institution. And the Central Library is really the last piece of the Bennett plan, where we can then sit back and say, for the next 100 years, Pasadenans, our community, and all the stakeholders will have these things at the core of our city. So again, it's a longer discussion than we have time for now, but I'm grateful to the associates who showed up Monday night and spoke in favor and who really support our local library here in Linda Vista. Okay, more people introduced. Before I do, I want to remind everybody that we aim to do 6 town halls a year, and we do 2 district-wide town halls, and then we do 4 neighborhood town halls in the 4 quarters of the district, roughly speaking. And this is the district town hall meeting for the Linda Vista neighborhood, sort of that area west of the Arroyo and north of the freeway, let's say. Obviously, all are welcome, and we'll talk about any issue that you want to talk about, but we've tried to tailor our presentations to, the local issues here that we're all aware of. So want to give a shout out to our public safety personnel. I'm a big supporter of public safety, both individually and because our neighborhoods are so supportive of the work that you do. We have police and fire. They're first among equals. I'm not going to try to pick one over the other ever, but they all do a fabulous job, and can we give it up for our fire chief and our police and fire. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll have time for some questions at the end. I also want to remind you, as each presentation rolls through, we can take questions for each sort of module at the time. We've got some PowerPoints for you. Let me conclude my remarks by saying, it's been a very busy time at the council, as usual. We did the charter amendment for the library, although two of my colleagues opposed it, which I really regret, and hope that doesn't hurt that too much. We're also doing, next Monday night, we're doing our governance charter reform. You may recall we formed a charter reform task force. We got a series of recommendations about how we govern ourselves. The high points of those are term limits and contribution limits. So if you're somebody that cares about political finance, campaign finance reform, term limits, for example, those things will be going onto the ballot in November. I expect we have to do the final approval Monday night, but in our prior discussion, we did direct the staff to move forward with that. At the committee that I chair, Legislative Policy, we're also looking at tweaking some of the rules of the way that we conduct ourselves as a council in terms of our meetings, trying to be more transparent, trying to make sure that we're complying with the charter in terms of the roles of the city council on the one hand and the staff on the other. And we're kind of overdue for that kind of tune-up. So we'll be bringing those forward in ordinance proposals, not on the charter reform, the charter amendment. So you may have heard our public health director has departed, Dr. Go. She returned to the city early this year after a time away back in Washington working with the administration. She came back and was here for a few months, and I think realized that her heart was really now into the work that she had been doing in Washington. So she's gone back now to work for Javier Becerra in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. He's a cabinet secretary, and we'll miss her. She was an excellent department head, but she'd been gone for some time, and so we have an interim health officer, which is a physician, and then an interim department head, which is Manuel Carmona, who was the acting while she was back in Washington previously, and we'll be going forward with a recruitment process for a new public health officer. Remember, we have only 3 city public health departments in the entire state of California. Pretty much everybody lays it off on the counties, but 3 cities, Pasadena, Long Beach, and Berkeley, actually have a municipal public health department, and I'm very proud of that. It served us well during COVID and other health challenges, so it's very important that we keep that department, very, very vital, and we will. We've got our 710 project is still sort of making its way through the visioning process. I'm happy to report that next week, the City Council's ad hoc committee on the 710 vision is meeting for the very first time. I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be on that committee, obviously, because it's in our district. And we continue to have our West Pasadena Roundtable group has been meeting regularly, as has the city-wide sort of task force and group. But my view, frankly, is this coming month in August, it'll be 2 years since we acquired title to the property. So, Coach Wooden used to say, be quick, but don't hurry, right? I think we're now in jeopardy of, both of those, right? We're not doing either. And I think we need to get about the business of defining the vision. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be controversy probably around whatever choices we make, but we can do it in the Pasadena way and hear all stakeholders and then move forward, and we should. So Justin Chapman, my great field rep, is here. And he succeeded Taka Suzuki, our other great field rep who was here also. Thank you, Taka. Taka went from being a great field rep to the noisiest constituent in 24 hours when she retired, but we love it. We love hearing from her, and you can imagine her perspective on things is so valuable. I want to give a shout out to a few others. Teresa Lamb Simpson, our really longtime colleague and friend with Adam Schiff's office, is here. Thank you, Teresa. Declan from Senator Portantino's office is here, Declan Floyd. And I'll be introducing the RBOC representatives. They're sort of there against the wall. It's not a lineup, guys. Don't, Nina, it's not, we're not lining them up against the wall. But they'll come up and speak. Meredith Thomas, I don't know, will be part of that, but I want to give a shout out to her in the pink dress, and thank you all very much for what you do as well. Okay, let me make sure I've covered everything. You may have heard about a court case. We have 4 lawyers on the city council, so we're always acutely interested in court cases that affect the city. And you may have heard about a case that's very controversial and a lot of different views, but called Grants Pass, Oregon. Grants Pass is a town that, like many places, including Pasadena, is struggling with the unhoused, with the needs and the impacts of the homeless on their municipal life in terms of their commercial vitality, the quality of life of the residents. It affects the public safety departments a great deal because we get a lot of calls for service that maybe properly aren't really police calls or necessarily medical calls in the sense that we think of them, but we have to respond, and we do, and we have great teams. We have a HOPE team, several HOPE teams, which is a police officer and a social worker. On the police side, we have port teams. The fire department is always very involved when we do our homeless counts, as is the police department. So the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals had said that cities could not enforce anti-camping ordinances unless they could provide the persons that were sleeping in public with a room and other facilities for them. And the Supreme Court reversed that decision and said no, that was not correct, and that cities should be allowed to enforce their anti-camping ordinances and come up with other ways to address the needs of the homeless. And I usually disagree, I think, with this Supreme Court on things, but on this one I actually concur completely. One of the little interesting facts in the record of that case is that the city of Grants Pass has a very robust homeless services function. And the court noted that when the Ninth Circuit enjoined enforcement of the anti-camping resolution, which meant that homeless persons could sleep on the sidewalk or in parks or in, as happened in Old Pasadena in my district, in the entryway of a restaurant. And the city couldn't do anything about it. And in that particular case, the restaurant went out of business. And I believe to this day it was because of that situation. When the Ninth Circuit said you can't enforce your anti-camping ordinance unless you have a room with a bed and a bathroom and all the rest, the utilization of the services that the city offered went down 40%. So essentially what happened was that there were those who just chose to sleep in the park, sleep on the street, and the services that they had provided went unused because of it. Now, we have to be compassionate, and we certainly shouldn't criminalize sleeping or criminalize the status of being a person who's unhoused, who's homeless. And there's a whole range of experiences that would capture. But for sure, there are persons who need mental health resources and who need substance abuse resources. And, if we can't have vibrant restaurants and parks and commerce and a quality of life for the residents, it'll be hard for us to be compassionate for anyone because we will not be able to generate the economic resources that we need to. So complex problem, but I've asked the city manager to establish a task force of city staff, including the city attorney's office, public safety personnel, and figure out what our approach is going to be now that we don't have to allow sleeping in parks, sleeping on the sidewalk, and the like. Again, I'm not talking about using jail cells for people that don't need to be in a jail cell, but I'm talking about maybe this will be the impetus for real state and federal programs that can address the problem, statewide and nationally, which is really what we need is resources. You're going to hear about the Colorado Street Bridge tonight. We had a good hearing about that at council, or at a committee rather, the Public Safety Committee. Final item, you may have heard the Ambassador Auditorium has been offered for sale by Harvest Rock Church. And I know not much more than that. I do know there's a listing price of $45 million for the auditorium. My sense is it would be very difficult to use that property for anything but the auditorium because of its historic nature and its sort of significance and importance. And my guess is it doesn't pencil out economically for a $45 million purchase. But if any of you are interested in purchasing an auditorium, and Madison has a nice ring to it, we could rename it, and we'll meet at City Hall on Monday morning and have a press conference, I suppose. But yeah, please.
Historically landmark?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I do know that it's just over 50 years old. Now, the question was, is it an historic landmark? And I don't know if any of the preservationists, pardon?
Might be eligible.
It might be eligible, but it is over 50 years, and I know that just that in and of itself under city zoning, and it triggers a very robust review. And again, if there's discretionary authority, I don't see any way the city would let anyone tear it down, for example, and build, something else. So, but it's tough, right? Because how do you make it economically viable? There's not a lot of parking there. And I know my office has been approached by the church and others about trying to provide parking on the 710 stump. But even if we were able to do that, it could only be temporary because we don't know what the community wants for that parcel, So the speaker series, for example, which was at the Ambassador, has moved back to the Civic Auditorium. I'm actually very proud of that because I think it's better there in the Civic. I don't want to hurt the Ambassador by any means, but so probably some hard decisions will have to be made going forward about that. So, okay, enough of me talking. This is your meeting. I want to hear from the folks that are here. And first one I'm going to bring up is from One Arroyo Foundation, Rick Gould, who has been with that organization for a number of years. Really, he's kind of the spoon that stirs the coffee over there. I know there are many others. Rick, Cynthia Kurtz, for example, is very involved. She's here, our former city manager. Can we go up for Cynthia? It's great to have her here as well, please. Thank you. Come on up, Rick. We had a groundbreaking just about 10 days ago, I think, for a trails project that we're very, very proud of, and I think Rick's going to tell us about that and maybe more of the foundation. Yeah. Okay. Pull it closer. Okay. Thank you. Good to see you, Rick. Thank you. Thank you. Let me scoot by you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me and letting me spend a few minutes with you. And I was going to introduce Cynthia. Cynthia is currently our interim executive director of One Arroyo, and I am the managing director of One Arroyo. Just a couple of seconds on who I am, because probably most of you have never seen me before. That's because for about 17 years, I was the director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services in Santa Clarita, California. So I was going that way while most people were coming this way. And I spent about 40 years in the Parks and Recreation field, and I retired in 2018 and got involved with One Arroyo, and I've been involved with the One Arroyo Foundation since the beginning. But more importantly, I live in Linda Vista. And I've lived in Linda Vista for about 15 years now and have thoroughly enjoyed it. My wife is a native of the area, so it's been fabulous to live here and to be involved with something in my community, even though I had to leave it so many times and so many mornings and go to city council meetings up there. What I'd like to talk a little bit about today is the One Arroyo Foundation. You may have seen a lot of press recently. We've gotten a lot, but we've been working for some time in background on the foundation and where we want to go. And I can't see the screen here, so I might actually move this a little bit so I can see where we are. Go ahead, Justin. Let's go one more slide. One Arroyo Foundation came to be back in around 2017. The inspiration for One Arroyo was a group of city leaders went to New York City and went to Central Park, and they talked to the folks at Central Park about what had happened there. Go ahead, Justin, I think I've got 3 clicks on this particular slide. The inspiration was, could a group of local citizens get involved with taking an issue that confronted a city and making things better? And in the 1970s, Central Park, I think many of you would probably agree who have been to New York, was not a place you wanted to visit in the nighttime. You may not have wanted to visit it during the daytime. It needed a lot of attention. And so our city leadership went back and started to talk to the folks that made a change in Central Park. And those of you who have been there recently probably know Central Park is the hub of New York now, along with the High Line. It's some of the best community space that you will find in a city of 8 million people. And so what they did, go ahead, Justin. They sat down and they talked with a group that were concerned citizens that started working with the city of New York to try to figure out how they could change Central Park and bring it forward into a positive place. And ultimately, they formed a group known as the Central Park Conservancy. And believe it or not, today, actually, the management of Central Park is not done by the city of New York. It's actually done by the Central Park Conservancy. And they raise private money to match city money to get things done. So this group of people back in 2017, it was led at the time by Mayor Tornick, Steve Mermel, Darrell Dunn, others, including Steve, who sat down and said, is there a way we can do that here in Pasadena? That's the last click, Justin. So they sat down and they said, what can we do? So maybe I'll do this. How's this sound? That means you have to watch me. So the history of One Arroyo was in 2017, the city formed a private group of concerned citizens known as the Arroyo Advisory Group. That group was led by former Mayor Bill Bogard and Doug Cranwinkle. And there were about 20 community people. I see Tom Seifert here, who was a part of the Arroyo Advisory Group. They sat down and they spent 18 months studying the Arroyo. They held a number of public meetings. They held a number of conference meetings amongst themselves, and ultimately came up with what we call, at least in our world, the final report. That final report was presented to the City Council in the fall of 2018. Oh, you're working on me. You got me ahead. Perfect. And the idea of the final report was to see if we could form a foundation that would support the Arroyo Seco. And there were 2 main things that were important to me and important to, I think, where we stand today within that final report. One was the formation of a nonprofit organization that could raise private money to match public money to get stuff done. And the other thing that was in that final report was a recommendation to do a project. And that project was called the Demonstration Projects. And the idea was, if we could raise private money, do a project, then we could prove that that foundation could be successful going forward in the future and take on more and more projects. And there's certainly plenty of examples here in Pasadena. Legacy Foundation, the library, all of those have support organizations that help the city get things done. So we started moving forward. Let's see what this one says. In 2019, we obtained our 501c3 status, and we elected Dan Rothenberg as the president of the organization. He remains the president of the board of directors. I'll show you who we are when I get to the end of the slides, but it's a very robust organization with a board of directors of about 20 currently. I think we can go ahead here, Justin. Oh, the MOU. One of the first things we did, and it was very important, was to establish a formal relationship with the city of Pasadena. We needed to be able to operate essentially as an arm of the city of Pasadena. We adopted, or the city council, I should say, we proposed and the city council adopted a memorandum of understanding in 2019 that essentially gave One Arroyo the ability to move forward and work in the community, advocate for the Arroyo, and try to get the demonstration projects done. And thankful thankfully, the City Council was very supportive, and we continue to have that MOU in place today. This is the organization's mission statement and vision statement. I can't see it from where I'm standing, so I won't read it to you, but you can go on our website and read it if you like. But it does focus on restoring and rehabilitating the Arroyo with a focus on the natural environment and a focus on community. That's really where we're focused. We're not focused on much beyond that, and I think you'll see as I talk a little bit about the demonstration projects, our focus is on rehabilitation and restoration at this point. So the project that was selected as part of the final report that came out in 2018 focused on a trail project known as the demonstration projects. And what we saw in those demonstration projects was that there is a core trail that runs through the Arroyo from San Pasqual Stables, not the stadium, all the way up to JPL. And that is about 8.5 miles long. There are some critical points along those trails that were in serious need of repair, rehabilitation, restoration between the three areas of the Arroyo, Cajamonga, the Central Arroyo, and the Lower Arroyo. And those two sections of trail roughly comprise about 3.5 miles of trail. One of the interesting parts of this part of the trail is that they are largely undeveloped. And I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. I won't take 100%, but on the 51 miles of the Los Angeles River and its tributaries, it has 9 major tributaries. As far as I know, there are only 2 places on that entire stretch where the river is not concrete. And the Arroyo, I think it's the most important tributary. It's probably not the biggest. I think probably Tujunga Wash is bigger, but there are only 2 places where there's not concrete on the bottom of the LA River watershed. And both of them are here in Pasadena. One of them is underneath the Colorado Street Bridge, and the other is at the base of Devil's Gate Dam. And both of those just happen to be our project locations. The next step that we undertook was in consultation with the city. The city said they weren't going to be able to get to this demonstration trail for some time. The city asked us to undertake the design process in order to get the demonstration projects done. The board raised the money. We hired through a competitive process a design firm. The name of the firm is RJM Design Group out of San Juan Capistrano, who had very strong trail experience, including Yosemite Park, many of our national forests, as well as local parks and county parks. And we began a design process in 2020, right before COVID, perfect time. At the same time we were working on the design process, we were very focused on starting to raise money for what we anticipated being the construction. Originally, back in the AAG period, there was an estimate that we might be able to raise somewhere around $7 million. We didn't think this project would probably cost that much, but we knew we needed to get money in place. And through the generosity of the City Council, Supervisor Barger through Proposition A, and ultimately the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, as well as our board and a number of private foundations here in Pasadena, Kaiser, Parsons, and a number of others that wish to be somewhat anonymous. We've been able to raise the amount of money that we need to not only design, but construct the projects. I think it's important, and I have this slide in here, and sometimes I'm told I shouldn't have it in here, but I think it's important for people to realize that the Arroyo Seco is a regional resource, and this is a map of cell phone usage of people who are walking around the recreation loop, just the concrete part out here, not the golf course, not the aquatic center, not Cajamonga, over a month's period. And I won't tell you the number unless you ask me during questions at the end, but it's an amazing number of people use the recreation loop. What's more important is to see where they're coming from. They're coming from as far away as Glendora, East LA, Porter Ranch, Beverly Hills, all over the Los Angeles area. Obviously, there's a concentration. You can see it here around Pasadena. But a lot of people come here to use the Arroyo. Why is that important to us? Because much of the money that is available, particularly through public grants currently from the state of California and the county of Los Angeles, is for regional use. They are looking for opportunities for people to be able to do stuff. And the reality is, they're already coming. These people are here every day, And so when we can do a restoration or rehabilitation and offer an opportunity for them to use something that they might not have used before, that's great. And if we can get him into a natural environment instead of a concrete environment, we see that as a positive. And there's 3 clicks here too, Justin. So what we did when we started to design the restoration of the trails is we did surveys. We went out to the community and said, what do you want to see? We had over 2,500 hits on the website, basically asking for people, what did they think? They looked at the project designs. Ultimately, we received 158 written responses related to specific locations on the website that ultimately influenced the final trail restoration project. And you can see where they came from. That's a map of actually all of the locations. And as you would expect, a fair amount of impact from not only the lower Arroyo, but also from Linda Vista. This one might take a while to come up here, Justin, because it's a pretty big file. Oh, there we go. What are we doing? When you go out on the trails today, you will find, particularly after the last 2 winters, with the heavy rainfall that you have, we will find on that 8.5-mile backbone trail significant washouts, significant downed trees, landslides that have blocked the trail, locations where the slope is better described as a pile of rocks than a trail. And so the intent is to go out onto the trail and make it as passable and as accessible as possible. This is an example of one of the things we'll be doing. It's called outsloping, where the hillside or the trail is sloped in such a way that the water rushes into the hillside rather than down into the arroyo. And we simply change the grade of what's going on. A good example of some of the other places that we'll be doing things is the face of Devil's Gate Dam. If you've walked up that face of Devil's Gate Dam recently, it's dangerous. Rocks about this size on a grade like this, it would be easy to fall. I can tell you that at least one person of political note who took a tour with us landed on their keister during one of the tours. I won't embarrass that person today, but it is a challenging walk. I've done it with quite a few people, not only our board, but Chad back there. I know Chad was with me, the fire chief was with us one day, and it is really a challenging trail, yet it's a jewel in the middle of Pasadena. So that's an example of what we'll be doing. Here are the 2 locations. On the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see the Devil's Gate Dam location. It comes down basically from the tunnel that goes through the dam, and it bifurcates at the bottom where the Tom Sawyer Camp has their ropes course. And you go to the west side of the east side and eventually terminates or connects itself on Washington Boulevard. We'll be working on both sides of the trail. There are a couple of places that require some pretty significant work. There's a landslide on the east side. On the west side at Cottonwood Canyon, there's a creek that has year-round water that comes down that turns into a hog wallow, where we'll be doing a small footbridge of about 6 feet in order to make it more passable for folks. But all in all, that 2-mile loop should be much more easily used over time. Also includes the redo of the face of Devil's Gate Dam to make the trail easier. I have been told by equestrian groups that it's too dangerous for them to bring horses out of the stables in Hawamonga down into the central Arroyo because of that slope. If you can go back one, Justin, sorry. On the southern location, this begins essentially at the casting ponds and the archery range. It goes up again, both sides of the Arroyo, eventually converging in the neighborhood of the Colorado Street Bridge, and then continues on up to Arroyo Boulevard, just south of the Holly Street Bridge, which we get to hear about tonight. The trail has a lot of interconnected pieces that we'll be working on, including one stretch of trail which is very flat, and as our designer calls it, it is stroller ready. So it should be easily used and more universally accessible than many trails are in some of our forests. I'll talk a little bit more about the next phase, but I think that's probably the place you will most see an impact. There's a slope underneath the Colorado Street Bridge that needs desperate repair. It's also very heavily cobbled, and there will be some terrace stepping there that should make it far more passable. You can go to the next one now. And I think I've got a couple of clicks up above. You might as well just put them all up there. In the middle of the process, we received a lot of feedback from the public, including some people who are in the room tonight, that we needed or could do more. And to date, the organization's raised about $4 million towards these projects, but we made a decision to expand the scope of the project about 6 to 9 months into the project. I can't remember the dates, it's all kind of blurred together. And we added work on the Parker-Mayberry Bridge, or I'll be corrected, Mayberry-Parker Bridge. The Parker-Mayberry Bridge, Mayberry-Parker Bridge, is the small bridge underneath the Colorado Street Bridge. And a lot of people don't realize it, but there are actually 2 bridges there. And that small bridge, and I'll show you a photo, I actually think there was a photo of that in one of the earlier slides. The Mayberry-Parker Bridge is one of the oldest bridges built in Pasadena. It was built a year after the Colorado Street Bridge for a whopping $30,000. And it is a bridge that was used to access Scoville Farms, which existed there at the time. The bridge is still there. It is perfectly passable. It's accessible on the west side, but it is not accessible on the east side. It's actually gated and fenced, which to a trail guy or a Parks and Rec guy makes absolutely no sense. So after listening to the public, we decided we would add an additional amount of money to the designer's contract, and we looked for ways to open that bridge to the public. At the same time, we also heard from a lot of residents, particularly in the lower Arroyo and the central Arroyo, that there was a need for stone wall repair in the Arroyo. And right there at the Mayberry-Parker Bridge are a ton of stone walls that need repair. So we added that into the project as well. And you can see, what you see here are some depictions of those stone walls and actually the design plans. If you go out there today, and I'm happy to go out there with you because I walk out there all the time, you will find that the plans will open the Mayberry-Parker Bridge to foot traffic, repair the stone walls and steps, and allow people to pass east to west across the top of the Mayberry-Parker Bridge. That phase of work is slated to begin in spring of 2025. We recently got through the environmental process, and we think city staff will be in a position to put it out to bid. It's totally funded, again, from One Arroyo's efforts along with the city. We think that'll start in the spring of 2025. The good news is, as Steve said, we had the groundbreaking for the first phase of work, all that trail work I already showed you, on July 13th. We think the work, which is about 75% of the physical work, will start on August 19th. The city intends to issue the notice to proceed on next Monday, I think it is. And the contractor will be out there. I'm very happy with the contractor. The contractor is one of the top 3 trail designers in the western United States. And I think you will see a dramatic difference in how the trail looks by about early to mid-November. I think that's it on that part. So just a little bit of self promotion here, a little bit about One Arroyo. Right now the organization is in a growth mode. Our biggest or our critical path was, can we do this? Can we raise private money to do a public project? And we think we've done that. So we're ready to start expanding. And I think this is the slide that talks about expanding into educational programs, volunteer programs, and quite frankly, further projects. What can we do next? And we're currently in the middle of that discussion. What's the next thing? We're talking to the city, and shortly we will probably put a survey out that will ask the community, what do you want us to see? What do you want us to see? What would you like us to focus on? How's that? Did I finally spit that out? And I think next, I think this is a kind of a plug to talk a little bit about what park foundations do. Park foundations are prevalent all across the United States. In Central Park, Millennium Park in Chicago, St. Paul, Minnesota has a tremendous park foundation system. Most major cities have it. And we think that One Arroyo can grow into a foundation that can support the Arroyo Seco, and that's our goal at this point. I think the last slide I have is who we are. This is the board of directors. You may recognize some of the names. Obviously, Cynthia, who's here with us tonight, is on that list as one of our staff people. You can see we're kind of a small organization, kind of bare bones, but I think you will see growth from the organization over time and more projects. And I think that's it. I did see a couple of hands, Steve, so I don't know where you are.
Let's take it. Yeah.
The current gate on Arroyo Boulevard will not be opened, nor will the fence be removed. What we are doing is making a trail connection from the intersection of Arroyo Boulevard and Westminster Drive down an existing trail onto the bridge. So that, if you will, protection remains. The reality, at least from my perspective as a parks professional, is that using the broken window theory, if you have a lot of broken windows, they will continue, people will come and continue to break them. When you open stuff up and you improve them and make them a jewel of the community, they are better protected because people are actually using the facility you have. Today, people will go out and vandalize that bridge. There is, I can show you multiple photos of graffiti. I'm sure the police department can talk about the number of times they've had to be down there. But if we can go down there and make that an integral part of our trail system, I believe we end up with a better community resource, and I think we have more people and more eyes watching what's going on. No, it's a trail connection from the stairway that comes down out of Desiderio Park. I think the thing to remember, and it's really good, it's a good point, when we first started, Desiderio Park wasn't there. And one of the things that we heard early on, many years ago, was that there ought to be a bathroom down there. Besides the fact that it would cost a lot of money that we don't have. It just didn't make any sense to us. Suddenly Desiderio Park is built, and so the idea is, why don't we get people to Desiderio Park? And we can do that with a trail connection rather than a huge infrastructure project. Honestly, I believe that the community will find a new resource and ability to walk on trails. Whether the bridge is open to pedestrian traffic or not will not change the existing situation that is down there. And like I said, I've been down there. I'm down there probably at least once a week, if not more, on multiple different times a day all the time. I see graffiti. I see the broken beer bottles. There is an existing system within the city to deal with that between parks and the police department. But I believe when you open a resource up, rather than being a place where people go and hide because nobody's looking at them, you open up a resource, I believe people will come and they will respect it. Are there going to be problems? That's the society we live in today. But do I think it will be better? Absolutely. So currently, the Mayberry Parker Bridge is accessible from a number of locations. If you live on El Circulo Drive, those residents are able to walk down to the west side of the bridge. I do see people, I do see people do it. The west side from the archery range, there is an existing trail that is regularly used. And that is how people are currently getting on the bridge, or they were going around the gates. I can show you some photos I have, but it's actually kind of funny. There are places where people have taken heavy-duty zip ties and put them on the fence so they can crawl around the gate. There are places where the fence that exists there today has been peeled back, and when it's been repaired, within a week it is peeled back again. Those paths exist today, yes. We will repair them. There is one trail that goes from the bridge, roughly diagonal from the bridge to the intersection of Arroyo and Westminster. The reality is, well, I'm not going to get into the technical details of the environmental document. The environmental document said there would not be an increase in parking. They are parking, generally speaking, down by the casting ponds in the existing parking lot. They are parking at Desiderio, and we are seeing a significant amount of parking at the Aquatic Center. Question one again, Bruce, please. Parking. No, I don't believe there's an ability to have additional parking in the lower Arroyo. And in fact, I think that detracts from the natural environment. I believe city ordinance actually prohibits additional parking in the lower Arroyo. Second part of the question is, the diversion streams. We recently met with the city to talk about the diversion streams. Both of the control devices that allow the water to go in were vandalized. We're currently talking with the city about how we can help get the damage repaired and get those open again.
Okay, can we thank Rick for being here, and thank you very much. Thank you. And maybe you mentioned a website. Can we find it if we look just One Arroyo Foundation? Yep.
www.onearroyo.org. And Cynthia brought a sign-up sheet with her.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
on the table over here. If you want to get on our mailing list or our email list when we put out newsletters or project updates, it's right up there on the front table. I'm in trouble for not mentioning that earlier.
No, you're good. And I will just say for the record, I did not fall on my keister on the trail. I don't need a trail to fall on my keister. I can do that on my own, thank you. But look, I'm sensitive to the concerns, right? My thing, when I first heard about, for example, the trip to Central Park, in West Pasadena, we do not want an urban park in the Arroyo. And that's not what this is, believe me. And if you saw the names on the board and the like, you know, Cynthia, Bill Bogard, Doug Cranwinkle, Molly Munger, these are people who live in and around the Arroyo and who are going to worship the sacredness of it as open space. I mean, I do think here in the central Arroyo, we have a lot of family recreation, but we've got more parking, and there's maybe a more intense use, as Rick said, of this central Arroyo. But where these projects are presently, it's in more of an open space, passive enjoyment, hiking and enjoying it. And I do think Desiderio, which was, you know, we worked on that for years to bring that project online. Then we had the whole fight about the restroom and about parking. And it seems to be doing really well down there. And I think that kind of attention is salutary in the sense that Rick described, that it brings positive scrutiny of it. You know, we've got park safety officers who now regularly check that it closes at sundown, which the parks in Pasadena do. So, you know, with this comes an obligation to manage it more responsibly, and we need to do that, no question. But I'm a big supporter of the foundation and really, really grateful. And as you said, a private-public partnership using public money, private money, donations. My dear friend Candy Rennick, who's terrific, is the development director. You know, Cranwinkle and Bogard, I mean, that's Pasadena royalty. And these aren't wild-eyed, you know, people who are going to pave over paradise to build a parking lot, you know, as the song sings. This is going to be an enhancement for all of us, hopefully. So thank you, Rick, very, very much. And it's a great segue to our next item, which is a very confounding one, frankly, for us, and it's right proximate to the work that Rick's been describing, and that is, you know, some of these bridge projects that we've been working on. And we had a hearing about the Colorado Street Bridge. I think I misspoke earlier tonight. We're going to be talking about the Holly Street Bridge here in Linda Vista. But let me then just mention that we had another public safety hearing about Colorado Street Bridge and what to do with the chain link barriers that we installed 7 years ago now, if you can believe it, when we had, I think, 12 attempted suicides from our bridge. And the city manager just made that executive decision under his authority that we needed to stop. And since then, we've kind of had some hiccups in terms of the design and all. Long story short, at the recent public safety meeting, the consensus that was reported to the committee was that there's a high level of support for the vertical barriers. I have to tell you, it's not my favorite because, number one, it really does affect the aesthetic of the bridge. Obviously, human life more important than any object or aesthetic, but there is that. And it kind of brands it. To me, it's almost throwing in the towel. It's a very defeatist kind of improvement because it basically says, oh yeah, this is a suicide bridge, that horrible label that's given to the bridge. I'm much more interested in trying to do something multimodal below the bridge, maybe the netting. I know my public safety guys are going to charge the lectern because that creates real problems for them. You can imagine, you know, the drunk kids who want to jump into the net, they have to then go get them. Or God forbid we have a suspect with a weapon who's down in that mid-range. You know, it creates lots of problems. So I'm not sure that's the answer either. But I've asked staff to go back and even look at a ground cover solution, or at least partial solution. You know, if we can make it not an attractive site for that horrible, you know, act of desperation, then maybe we can stop it without kind of throwing in the towel. But I'll tell you, we're getting very close to a majority of the council just saying, let's build, you know, 15-foot vertical barriers up above the side of the bridge. And it sounds like wire mesh is the preferred alternative if we do that. So, you know, it goes down hard for everybody in this community that worked hard to restore the bridge not that long ago, and what it means. Talk up, please. So I think that's the question is about the vertical struggling trellis almost, the vertical trellis that then can appear from a certain angle like a wall. But I think the staff's view is the vertical barrier that people tend to support is the wire kind of mesh that appears like almost invisible in a way. But unless you're right on the bridge or walking on it, and I think, so stay tuned on that, more to come. And let me bring up one of our engineers. We have Principal Engineer, I think James Tong is here, right? James, where are you? Come on up, please, thank you. And these Public Works folks work really, really hard for us every day at the city. So can we welcome James to talk about the Holly Street Bridge? Thank you. Oh, good, you brought your team. Will you introduce the team then too?
Right.
I'm sorry, yeah.
So, good evening, everyone.
Here, use the mic, please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is James Tong. I am, so basically I brought the whole team. I have Roya. She is going to be managing the construction, once we are done with the design. And then I brought the team from Docking Engineering. Amy is our environmental specialist, and Rob is our structural engineer. So basically, this is pretty much our whole team that's been working on the Holly Street Bridge. And just a little background of me, I started with the city back in September of 2017. And me and Rick, we used to work together back in Santa Clarita for 17 years. So he retired in 2018, but I'm still working. So just a little introduction. Don't know if the slide is up there. We have the slide because I have this hard copy. So they're going to be working on putting the slide up, if that's possible. If not, okay, so I'll just keep going. The reason for us being here is basically to provide the project information updates. Like I said, I started in 2017 September, but this project was in existence, started from October of 2013. So just a little background, Holly Street Bridge, as you all know where they are located, is between Linda Vista to the east, and also the Orange Grove to the west, right? So it's basically between the two, Orange Grove to the west, Linda Vista to the east, right? The bridges. Am I right? Okay. You know where it is. You know where it is. Exactly. So you know where it is. So just in case, if you don't know, the bridge was constructed almost exactly 100 years ago. It started construction in 1924 and completed in 1925. So by the time we are done with the design, and by the time we're going to start the construction, it's going to be a little bit past 100 years. And like I said earlier, back in 2013, the city had the opportunity to apply for the bridge rehabilitation. So we went to Caltrans back in October of 2013 to apply for this thing called Highway Bridge Program. And we were successful in getting the funding from FHWA. FHWA is a Federal Highway Administration. And we were successful with getting this Highway Bridge Program funding. And the beauty of this funding is we will get 88.53% to be exact. So 88.53% of the total project funding will be funded by this Highway Bridge Program. And the rest is basically the local fund, which is 11.47%. So what we did a little bit further was we want to look for getting this bridge construction to be 100% funded, right? So we didn't think that 88.53% was enough, so we want to go for 100%. And back in 2020, somewhere in the 2020, Federal Highway Administration, they had the funding available. It's called the voluntary program. So voluntary program, we have to be eligible. So this Holly Street Bridge was eligible as part of this thing called voluntary program. And we applied for the voluntary program. In order for us to apply for the voluntary program, we had to submit a lot of technical reports, one of them being the seismic strategy report. And the team from Doc and Rob and his team, we submitted all the information to Caltrans, and it took about 12 months. And it was a lot of going back and forth, providing additional information, and we were successful too. We were successful with this voluntary program. So now that we were successful with this approval of the voluntary program, Caltrans decided to fund us 100%. So we went from 88.53 to 100%. So this project will be 100% funded by Federal Highway Administration. So what I really want to emphasize on is this bridge is for seismic retrofit. So we are here to improve the seismic of the bridge. As I mentioned earlier, the bridge was constructed 100 years ago, right? So when it was constructed 100 years ago, they met all the seismic requirement 100 years ago. But now that things change and the seismic requirement has been more stringent, we want to meet up that stringent seismic requirement. That's why the bridge itself is for seismic retrofit. We are not here to do any sort of alteration to the aesthetic of the bridge. The aesthetic, the exterior treatment of the bridge will still look the same, right? So, like for a better term, we'll be gutting out inside of the rebars and the concrete. So we'll do all that improvements, but once that's done, we'll put it back in place as it looks what it is right now. And so when it comes to Caltrans, when it comes to Highway Bridge Program, when it comes to federal highway, when you have federal money involved, we have to meet this thing called NEPA, which something that Amy will explain it. So not only we have to meet the California environmental requirements, we have to also meet the federal environmental requirements. So that's why the project has been taking a little bit longer than we wanted to, but the beauty of it is it's going to be 100% funded. So that's the great news about this Holly Street Bridge. So just in case if you don't know, the Holly Street Bridge will be the second major bridge reconstruction next to the La Loma, also known as John Vandekamp. John Vandekamp Bridge was constructed back in 2017, end of 2017. So this will be the second major bridge rehabilitation work that we're going to be working in District 6. And we are looking at completing the design by July of 2025. And so the reason for needing to have this 1 year duration of design is everything that we design will need to be reviewed and approved by Federal Highway Administration because they are funding this 100%, so they want to make sure that they review it, they concur it before they give us the funding. So we're looking at design completing it by middle of next year, and the construction should start in early 2026. And we're looking at maybe like a year time for the construction to complete. And this concludes my portion of it, and Amy will cover. So let's save the question for later once we are done, and then we'll be happy to answer any question that you might have. So I'm going to have Amy come up and cover all the environmental resources of this project.
Hi, so my name is Amy. I'm working with the city on this project since it was brought up with Dockin, so I have a long history on it, which is great. Okay, so we mentioned that there are 2 environmental compliance processes that this project has to go through. That first one is the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. The city of Pasadena is the lead CEQA agency for that. And then after review, the city decided that the appropriate level of analysis for this seismic rehab project was called an initial study with mitigated negative declaration. Now, the other environmental process is the federal one. That's the National Environmental Policy Act. We've been talking about FHWA. They're giving the funds, but Caltrans administers the funds. So that's why Caltrans, on behalf of FHWA, is acting as the federal lead. They are the NEPA lead for this project. Now, the appropriate level of environmental analysis under NEPA is called a categorical exclusion for this particular project. So as part of both NEPA and CEQA, we had to develop a project study area, which should be in the red outline on the screen, the light red outline on the screen. And we have to analyze all the things that are in this red outline or immediately adjacent to them to figure out what environmental resources are out there, which include things like the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center, the Holly Street Bridge itself, the Arroyo Recreation District, and also includes the residential districts. So it includes cultural items, biological items, as well as what is the human experience out there. So some of the highlights of that environmental resource studies was obviously the Holly Street Bridge itself, very historic. It's eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. It's also a big part of the Arroyo Parks and Recreation Historic District, so it's serving two purposes there. But the project was able to be designed with that seismic rehab in mind to follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic bridge rehabilitation. Those are pretty strict federal guidelines, and the city of Pasadena went to the State Historic Preservation Officer, presented that plan on how to follow those federal requirements, and the SHPO agreed. So it's a great big piece of the puzzle for that environmental analysis to make sure that the historic nature, the character, that visual component that makes it historic is not going to be altered in a way that would look different to the everyday user. We also took a look at the Arroyo Parks and Recreation District, the Arroyo Cycle Flood Control Channel, the Arroyo Cycle Trail, and just biological habitats that are in and around the area. For the Recreation District, there's really no impact because this is a seismic rehab of the existing bridge. For the flood control channel, that will be protected. There won't be anything going into that channel. And the trail will also remain open and protected during construction of this project. All right, so where are we in this whole CEQA NEPA process? Like we mentioned earlier, environmental and early design of this project was started in the early 2013, but the environmental studies and surveys really didn't happen until about 2018 and 2019. So those included, what are the aesthetics, what are the visual character out there that needs to be studied, and we looked at everything, including air quality, biological habitats, other cultural resources out there, noise impacts, water quality, everything like that is considered as part of this process. From July to August 2019, that CEQA document, the initial study with mitigated negative declaration, that was sent out to the public for a public review period, and there was also a public meeting to go over what that document included, the analyses in there, and just the overall project. After that was completed, Caltrans completed their part of the NEPA process and authorized the categorical exclusion in about October 2019. And then between 2020 and 2024, there was a bit of a redesign, and that redesign resulted in even less invasive rehabilitation of that bridge. So that's the good news about that is the visual character of the bridge really shown during that design redo. So in September 2023, Caltrans took another look at that redesign and reauthorized another categorical exclusion under NEPA. So that means the NEPA process for this bridge is now concluded. And that brings us to where we are today. So from here in July till about September or so, the CEQA environmental document will be finalized. And there will be, at least on the next slide that I go into, there will be another notice that goes out to the community, so you have another opportunity to check out that environmental document. And then about fall 2024, the City Council will determine whether or not they approve that environmental document, think it's sufficient for the CEQA analysis, as well as approve the overall project. So our next steps for the environmental process. This CEQA project re-notification period. So in the next few weeks, there will be a notice that's sent out to the residents in the area. It'll include information on how to access the updated CEQA document and how to provide comments, if anybody has comments that they'd like to submit. Also in that notice, there will be dates and times for another public meeting, informational meeting that everyone can attend to ask more detailed questions on that CEQA analysis, NEPA analysis, and the overall project in general. We think that that public information meeting will be held towards the end of August. So after comments are received during the public review period, during that information meeting, the city will consider all of those comments and determine if any revisions are needed to the project or to the document itself. And then once the CEQA document is finalized, it'll be brought to City Council, who will determine whether or not they approve the overall project and approve what's included in the CEQA analysis. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rob, who'll go over more information on what is being proposed.
So just real quick, we brought the posters here. It's a wall. Right, so we have it here too. So just in case if you want to look at it in more detail, it's available for this.
So this graphic shows the 5 main components that we'll be addressing with the construction. The first is the deck rehabilitation. You'll see a lot of alligator cracking and failed pavement on the deck right now, so the project will remove that pavement. And then also patch all the old original concrete, so we'll be taking it down to the original deck grade and repairing that. And then we'll be putting a polyester concrete surface on it, which gives it it looks like concrete, but gives it a durable riding surface for the vehicles. On the barrier, there's a section of the barrier that was hit a couple years back that was replaced with a temporary metal barrier. The rest of the historic barrier has cracks, exposed rebar in the sidewalk, so we'll be going and repairing all that, fixing it back up from the barrier side back to its original condition. The spandrel columns, which are the small columns over the archway that connect the deck to the archway, those are one of the most seismic critical members. So we'll be at the bottom and the top where it connects to the arch and the deck, there's the little coping or capital. We'll be pulling the existing concrete off, installing new rebar, and then reconstructing it in its exact shape of the as-built condition. So other than looking different color on the new concrete, it'll be the exact shape as the original bridge. We'll also be installing a confinement wrap on the prismatic section of those spandrel columns to help confine that concrete in the event of a seismic event, so it doesn't blow apart and gets held together and strengthened. And then over the entire bridge, we went and mapped all the spalled concrete. Spalled concrete is just concrete that's falled off or deteriorated, and all the corroded reinforcement and all the cracks that we've got. So we mapped all that out. We'll be going over the whole bridge, repairing all that, removing damaged concrete, putting in new rebar, and injecting epoxy in the cracks. And then the last component of the seismic retrofit is the joint rehabilitation. So at each end of the arch, you'll see these dashed lines on each. That's a thermal expansion joint, so it expands and contracts. We'll be removing the deck, installing below the deck these pipe shear keys to tie it together, and then casting concrete around it. It won't be visible from the deck surface and hardly visible from underneath. It'll look pretty similar to the as-built condition. So that summarizes our 5 main components. Oh, and with that,
Yeah. I know we have some questions. Let me start by asking the big one that's probably on our minds. We went through closures last year of Holly Street Bridge for some time. I'm guessing there are going to be closures here as we move forward.
That's right. So like Rob had mentioned, when we are doing the deck work and when we are removing the asphalt, which is the surface of the bridge with this polyester concrete, yes, there will be a time where the bridge itself will be closed. We don't quite exactly know how long, because we are still in design. And so what we could do is, what we do with every construction project is, what we do with every construction project is we post it on the city website, updating, the residents and whoever that wants to know the status of the projects. We have the website that will be updated with the duration of how long the bridge will be closed. And it will work with the public information officer to update and to be very transparent on, how long the closure is going to be, when is it going to be. And so, we'll work with, whoever that might be affected so that they are notified ahead of time.
And my office will be closely on top of this too, so you can communicate with us and look at our website as well. We're sensitive to the impact on the neighbors from the closure. I mean, for many, this is like the one way in and out, right? So, we're talking about our fire guys, getting in and out, our firefighters, our police officers, our, all of us. So very important. I'm sensitive to time, so, but Bruce, question is, why doesn't this one need as, I guess, extensive redo as La Loma? But if you could, please, thank you.
So there was a seismic fault located right in the middle of the La Loma Bridge that had a big offset of about 3 foot. So it required a much more bigger design. So while the seismic shaking is similar for this one, it doesn't have that fault. So that's why it's substantially less rehab.
So it's the same radius that the previous document utilized. It's about 500-foot radius all around that red area. So it's quite linear, but it goes all around.
We're going to amplify that. We'll make sure that everyone in Linda Vista gets notice of this for sure.
Right, and it might not be a postcard, it might be in an envelope or something like that, so just keep a lookout for it in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, any more questions? Yes, sir.
Can you tell us the closure, is it going to be weeks, months, years?
So we have a traffic consultant that is looking at overall traffic patterns and studying it thoroughly, and we'll be putting together a full traffic management plan. So it's a little too early to say definitively, but we are considering seasonal events and all sorts of use to kind of optimize the closures. But I can't say for sure how long it'll take.
Yeah, and I remember last year weather was a big issue. I think it was weather damage we were repairing in the first place, and then the weather intervened again, and we had to stop and start and all. So we've got to hope for good weather as well. But we'll get through this and do the best we can to mitigate the impact. It's a big sacrifice, there's no question. But we really don't have much choice. So, okay, thank you all very much. And I want to move on to our fire department presentation. Tim Sell is here, Chief Sell, rather, excuse me. And and our chief is here as well, and I am sensitive to time, so let's be quick, but don't hurry, like Coach Wooden said.
Good evening. When Vice Mayor gives me the wink twice, that means it's time for us to get off. So good evening to everyone. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. Chad Augustine, your Pasadena Fire Chief. With me tonight, I have a Deputy Chief and Fire Marshal, Tim Sell. We're going to cover 2 things and then open it up for any questions. The first, I want to talk about our seasonal outlook for brush fires this year. And then Chief Sell is going to talk about our evacuation plan and where we're at. So every spring, the fire meteorologists, they look at all sorts of things, from fuels, fuel moistures, what type of weather there's been over the last year, and they give a prediction for the fire season. And historically, they are very accurate. This year, they're way off. Their prediction was that this would be a really mild start to the fire season, and that California would have a late fire season, and Southern California specifically would have a really late and moderate fire season. To date, we're over 200% of what our annual average is across the state for brush fires. We've had over 4,300 brush fires up and down the state. Right now, there's over 30 active brush fires going on in the state, and we've burned over 300,000 acres. I say all that to say it's going to be a busy fire season. We've sent, your Pasadena Fire has sent fire personnel to over 10 fires from Southern California all the way up to near the Oregon border already this year. And why is that important? We're helping our neighbors, and then in the time when we're in need, in return, they're here to help us. Also, in the last year, we've rewritten all of our local mutual aid agreements, specifically with our federal partners, LA City and LA County, who provide us resources that we don't have, dozers, hand crews, and aircraft. So that's really important to us, that we have specifically the aircraft for us on that initial brush dispatch. They can be there as quick as our crews are there, and in terrain that is difficult for us to get to and extinguish a fire. And so we're going to continue to work on those partnerships. We're also, this year, we got our 4,000 brush inspections done, and our residential brush inspections nearly a month early, which was really important to us because we were seeing what the early fire season was already coming to. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chief Sell to start talking about some of our evacuation planning.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. So, they really didn't want me to run off with that. I won't go far, I promise. So we have an evacuation plan that was adopted by City Council in 2023. And it's a living document. It's something that we continue to assess really weekly throughout. And as technologies come and we leverage those, we can go and make changes to that plan accordingly, so we can keep any resident or any visitor to the city of Pasadena safe and as safe as possible. So the plan, what it does is it focuses on expediting the movement of a person, an animal, from a hazardous area. And I think when we think evacuation plans, we always associate with fire, right? But in reality, it could be a flood, it could be an earthquake, and this is a citywide plan, so it's not just specific. There are things that are specific to like this neighborhood, versus to one that may be the neighborhoods that are south of Colorado, off of Lake. So what this plan does is it looks at what's individual to the areas and allows us, and again, that living document to grow and expand it. It provides templates for emergency communications that address things such as assembly points, evacuation points, and reunification centers. It'll provide us transportation options for persons with access and functional needs. It also provides procedures for traffic control and traffic measures to secure particular areas. What it does not do, it is not going to give you turn-by-turn navigation out of your neighborhood on where you should go. And the reason is, if we go to a fire doesn't behave, right? It doesn't tell us where it's going to start, the direction that it's burning, how fast it's going to burn. Those are all things that we are doing now that we can use technology to leverage. So if a fire starts in a particular area, we can leverage data and technology that's now to where it'll give us the average rate of spread. So we can kind of time it out on, is an evacuation necessary? Is it not? How quickly we need to evacuate, how quickly we need to notify residents that are in that areas. And again, this goes back to working with the individual neighborhood groups such as the LVAA, or the Western Pasadena Association, to go and to look at what is particular to those neighborhoods and try to adopt and include some of those things in the plan so the residents of those neighborhoods can feel safe. Next slide, please. The evacuation plan will detail kind of the roles and responsibilities of our city resources and surrounding agencies. And we listed a couple examples of these. It's coordinating fire with police, with our transportation department, public health, American Red Cross, the county, because of our how we are bordered, and then CHP, because really a lot of these evacuation routes are led to the natural barriers. And the one thing in this neighborhood, as an example, we've got some natural barriers, which are freeways, right, which will provide natural, if we're talking in terms of a fire, they would provide a natural fire break. Next slide, please. As part of the evacuation plan, a method for communication was established, and this is how are we going to communicate with our partners within the city, but also how can we communicate with you, and I'll get to that in another couple slides. The residents will be notified using all of our available methods, which would be our mass notification alerts, radio, TV, our social media platforms, our city website. From a PD perspective, our partners in PD can assist us with sirens and door-to-door resources. We want to leverage everything. This plan is designed to, again, as I said in the beginning, all residents, all visitors to the city. It's not designed for identifying just one person. Next slide. Actually, with the help of LVAA as an example, we talked just a couple weeks ago about preparing a go bag and what are some of those things. So in the last month, what we've developed, and we left a stack of those that are over here on the table, and I would encourage everybody to grab those. One is a did you know, and it talks about how the red flag works, for this area in particular, on when we would enforce parking, when we not, what a red flag means, what are the conditions of those. Also the differences of what an evacuation warning versus an order means. So all of this is provided for you. And those, if you have a smartphone, there's QR codes that are on here that are QRs, and it'll take you directly to the city's website on how to sign up for the Please, the Alert County, our Nixle, and any city resources that are there. You can go and just hold your phone over it, and it'll take you directly to that website. And again, it's leveraging technology so we can get information out to you as quickly as we can. On the other side, we use both sides. Is things to include in a go bag, right? In a go bag, where in the event of an emergency, what are some things that I may not realize in an emergency that you can prep beforehand? So those are located right over here. We've got two stacks. We've got a city one, and then we have a fire department specific ones. But this was developed a month ago out of a conversation with LVAA. So again, we're doing everything we can as we work through our neighborhood groups and associations across the city to leverage whatever we can to make it as safe as possible. Next slide, please. So the Genesis project, this is coming soon. This is actually being rolled out as we speak by Los Angeles County, and this is leveraging our GIS, which is, it's computer, it's mapping, it's all the data from sewers, water, taking tax records that are there to where we could potentially outline, I know the slide on the left doesn't, but we could potentially draw a circle around, and it will tell us how many people should be home during what time of day that you have. And it could be, and they take some of that data based off of utility records, approximately how many people live in that area, how many cars should be at whatever time that are there. So when we go through and are evacuating an area, we've got an idea. Are we fully populated? Is the 1,000 homes in this neighborhood, should everybody be home right now? At night, after 10 o'clock, probably. Right at 1 o'clock during the day, maybe not. Maybe that's when people are at work, or we've got people, and we're leveraging all the data possible. This is a really, really interesting project that's going on that LA County is kind of headlining for the area. And what it does, it's not LA County specific. It's going to be LA County, Pasadena, Glendale, but it's taking all of the GIS information so that if a fire starts in a different jurisdiction, and as I talked earlier about where that fire is moving, we can leverage technology to go, let's get out in front of it. We're going to have 1,000 people that we're going to have to move. Let's start early. So it's really, really cool technology. Next slide, please. Again, these are copies of please pick up your postcard on the way out. And we're happy if there's some things that you would like to see included or that are not on there. Please respond to us. Get a hold of the fire department, and we'd love to create these flyers. Anything that we can do to help the citizens and the residents have a safe evacuation. Next slide. How about that? Yeah. Yes. Oh, you asked the easy question. That's good. Yeah, easy. Thank you for the lob. So here's what I'll say. Here's what's great about the Rose Bowl and this property. What do you see when we look out right here? We see green grass. We see green trees. The distance that you travel from where the potential people are in the Rose Bowl to where, and we are not in what's a crown fire area. A lot of people want to go, and you look at the Linda Vista and you want to associate it with like the Oakland Hills fire, right? It's a crown fire. A lot of these fires that move super quickly through areas are wind aided. We know that wind is a big thing. We are constantly, and we have our Rose Bowl friends here, when weather, we consider that, and we consider it in our planning. We consider it if we've hosted an event, and in the last couple of years, we've postponed events because of lightning strikes in the area, because of heavy wind. You look at what they've done with us and with Dodger Stadium. If there's an already working fire that's in the immediate area, it's okay to postpone an event in that case. I think in answer to your question, the natural barriers that are around here really, really help us out. Absolutely help us out. And I think what we can do as your public safety partners is to make sure that we are considering absolutely every alternative, and we just don't olay that everything will be fine.
Chief Sell, can I add one thing?
Yes.
The other thing that we have now with our technology is rapid fire modeling. So we can quickly, within a couple minutes, know where that fire, based on wind, fuel, terrain, where it's going to be in 30, 60, 90 minutes, up to 3 hours. And so we can quickly map that and then decide, okay, we only need to evacuate this neighborhood. And all these other people that would have 20 years ago, when we didn't have that technology, would have evacuated and we would have clogged the streets. Now we can say, hey, for everyone else, you're safe to shelter in place. And then this district, this zone, that's what they call it here on Genesis, a zone. We call it a district. We're going to evacuate you, and this is the route that you're going to take. It allows us to be much more accurate instead of a shotgun approach.
Okay, I want to give equal time to our police officers, so please do pick up one of those postcards. Very, very helpful. And I know you're doing your brush clearance thing too, going out and inspecting our homes. And
Yes, 4,000 houses have already been inspected.
fabulous.
Yeah.
So if you've got foliage over your house, you take care of it. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to bring our Lieutenant Area Commander up, Matthew Campo, and you've got K-9 Officer Pierce with him as well, I think. And I'm going to ask you to truncate the presentation a little bit, just say we're safe and we can go home. No. Matt Campo, he's our local area commander for this area. So Lieutenant Campo, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. This is Officer John Louie brought along. He's one of our K-9 officers. You might have seen his partner outside in the car, the air conditioning. But at the end, I'll cover how he's... I'll bring it closer. Does that work? So yeah, at the conclusion, I'll talk about how the K-9s assist us in burglary investigations. But we'll cover some crime stats for your service area. The most common crime in the Linda Vista area is burglary. The number for year to date is up to 14, so that's approximately 2 per month. The next most common is larceny and unspecified thefts, which has been 13. And then the third most is theft from vehicles. The theft from vehicles predominantly comes from the Lot I near the Aquatic Center. But I think that burglary is the thing I want to touch on right now, because although there was 3 significant cases that occurred last month, they were not on Linda Vista. They were just south of the freeway, but it relates because it could easily happen. And I want to talk about how some technology helped us make some arrests in this case. So on June 7th, there was a residential burglary that occurred in the evening hours. The victim actually received a ring notification and then was away. Noticed that there was 2 masked suspects entering her home. House ended up being, when she returned home, the house was ransacked and there was approximately $35,000 in high-end jewelry stolen. Shortly after that, minutes after that, there was on the same street, which I'm not going to tell you the name just for confidentiality, but on the same street, there was another ring notification. And in that home, there was 2 masked suspects walking down a hill towards the driveway of the rear yard. Again, no one was home. When they returned home, there was over $35,000 in high-end jewelry and watches stolen from this home. About 5 minutes later, on the same street, there was a third residential burglary. That victim returned home and discovered that their house had been ransacked. However, the alarm was activated, but the alarm did not engage, and that's going to come into play at the end of this. The victim reported about $15,000 in high-end jewelry and purses stolen from this house. So the following morning, our detectives canvassed, found video surveillance cameras in the area, and found 2 cars of interest that were in the area. This detective we have is very sharp. He made an information want flyer, and within minutes, he received a phone call from a Simi Valley detective who informed him that on the day before, on June 5th, they had also a residential burglary and similar cars involved. So what this detective did, he utilized a system called Flock Automated License Plate Reader, and he was able to identify both vehicles, and his surveillance crew ended up locating them in a city in the San Fernando Valley. He quickly authored a search warrant for a tracking device and was able to place tracking devices on these vehicles. How that comes into play is because of information sharing. He was able to review the tracker, and that white SUV was on that street at those 3 houses on the same time frame where this occurred. So we joined forces, a joint operation with the Simi Valley detectives and a couple of surveillance crews. And 5 days later, on June 12th, we coordinated a joint surveillance of the 2 suspect vehicles. During the operation, we observed them casing numerous neighborhoods and houses, and ultimately, they attempted a burglary in the city of Long Beach. A decision was made to take them down. So there was, the takedown occurred, both vehicles, 6 suspects ran on foot. We were able to apprehend 4 of them, and they turned out to be a South American burglary crew. So during the search of the vehicle, evidence was recovered from the vehicles linking them to the Pasadena burglaries, as well as what's called a Wi-Fi signal jamming device. That signal jamming device is the reason why some of the alarms don't go off, or folks who have like Wi-Fi surveillance cameras or Ring cameras. These devices interrupt the network, and so it shut virtually, like not virtually. Sorry, my battery's low. Body-worn cameras. So the more sophisticated high-tech crews have these devices. In regards to the case, it's an ongoing investigation. They've met with the DA in Ventura County. I believe the ultimate goal is to file out there because they've found additional victims, but they were able to marry the cases up together. For those who are not aware of Flock is the automated license plate reader cameras, and what they do is objectively capture vehicle license plates and associated vehicle characteristics. They do not capture people's faces or the people at all. It's just the license plates. And what they're used for is preventing crime and sending real-time alerts to whatever law enforcement agency that they're in. And that happens like when a stolen vehicle or a vehicle associated to a wanted fugitive has been detected within the city. So the cameras also send real-time alerts when the vehicle is associated to an abducted or missing person, an amber or a silver alert. We get that information like much more quickly, and we can save lives. In addition, the ALPR system also supports detectives when conducting criminal investigations by providing critical information, like in this case, that will generate immediate actionable leads, which result in the apprehension and recovery of crucial evidence. In the last year, sir, you know we've added several cameras, and we're in the process of adding more. Right now, there's in your district we have 2, but the plan is to increase those numbers. And then, like I said, with I'll jump over to K9 real quick, and then we can finish with that. With our K9s, they are crucial to our burglary investigations. So what they do, we don't assign them calls for service, except who better to go to when one of your burglary alarm goes off to send them. They're able to set up containments. They have the dog as a tool, and they're not tied down to calls. So when anything burglary related comes out, they without being dispatched telling them, they jump on, they volunteer for it and get there, and then they'll come to a supervisor and tell me what resources they need, and I get it out there as quick as I can, including obviously the airship and whatever other resources we need. Do we have time for him to go over a couple things to K9?
Yes, please, yes.
Just to go over the amount of dogs and the. Sure.
Okay, I'll make it really quick because I know it's getting late. Your K9 unit has 6 dogs. We have 2 that are single purpose. One's narcotics, one's explosives. And then you have 4 that are dual purpose apprehension and also detection. So 2 of those are bomb dogs and 2 are narcotics dogs. So you have 3 and 3 total and 4 patrol dogs. The patrol dogs are the ones that assist in responding to these burglary calls, suspicious vehicles, suspicious persons, anything that you guys call in your neighborhood. We're usually the first ones that are responding. That way it frees up the patrol officers to handle their areas, and we predominantly focus on your guys' areas. The instances where these suspects were taken down, when those burglaries occurred, we were the first ones there. We use our dogs to search and make sure no outstanding suspects are hiding anywhere for your safety. Make sure that nobody's hiding in the darkness in your houses, in your bushes, in your neighborhoods. That's why we have special training to set up containments. We have protocol that we follow, make sure it's within policy and within the law to search for violent felony suspects, and that's the patrol side of it. So whenever you guys see something suspicious, we always suggest reporting it, call a non-emergency or emergency line depending on the situation. We're always going to be probably the first ones there to respond to that call. We can follow up with you, let you know what happened. You could always leave your phone number. We'll be happy to contact you. But yeah, anything suspicious, we'll be there. We use our dogs as a tool to keep you guys safe. Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Great, thank you, guys. Let me just... couple of quick comments, and then we'll take questions and then wrap up with just the introductions of the Rose Bowl staff. But I did want to say that this is so insightful about police work, right? And how, first of all, the resources that we need to protect our public safety, right? Like when you talk about surveillance crews, search warrants, it's multiple officers that need to deploy and follow the clues. And our detectives, there's a lot of criticism of police these days, and perhaps on an individual case that's warranted, but they want to catch bad guys. They want to protect us. Our police officers became police officers to do that. And it's amazing when we see these teams work together. I love our K9s. Now, we had a case just recently where our suspect hurt one of our K9s. And I was almost madder about that than I was, one of you guys getting in a fight, because it was just so wrong, and thank God you doing. I hope that wasn't your dog, but you just see the resource. Also, I will tell you the technology that we have, the body cams, the scanners, the shot spotter in some parts of our community, because we regularly have, just 2-3 miles from here as the crow flies, but 1,000,000 miles from our neighborhoods in terms of the sort of circumstances. We have regularly shots fired, and we have Shot Spotter, which tells us right away. Many of the community members are afraid to call in, don't want to get involved, don't want to be targeted for retaliation. So this technology helps us. I will tell you that every time we get those requests to provide them, there's pushback from some in the community, and this is a good thing. We should have an open dialogue about everything we do, about privacy rights and is there an abuse and all that. There are a lot of checks and balances, but it's very helpful for officer safety and for protecting our community, which is what we want to do. We want to catch these bad guys. So I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but I really feel strongly about this. Please, no, you got a question, please, go. I don't think red lights in California, red light cameras are legal any longer for running red lights. And I will tell you, this has been an age-old problem, of speeding on Linda Vista, other places in our community. I asked this year, like I pretty much always do, for more motor officers, for more officers generally. We're way down from where we used to be in terms of our police officers, and I think that's a shame. Our population's grown, not gone down. We do deploy motors. Now, you know what happens, right? When our motors go out, the residents get the tickets, and then they say, well, not me, it should be that other guy, so... But we hear you, we're all rushing around like crazy. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm with you. And let me, not to get into I was a prosecutor for 9 years, so this is my wheelhouse. I will tell you, the city only prosecutes misdemeanor cases, first of all. So we have our own city prosecutors. A lot of cities of our size are in the LA County. They contract with the DA's office to do that. We have a courthouse here in Pasadena. We staff that courthouse with criminal prosecutors, but our jurisdiction municipally is only for misdemeanor violations. So that's number one. Felonies, like the kind the lieutenant area commander was talking about, are felonies. That's going to be the DA's office. He mentioned Ventura, LA County DA. And frankly, I'm not pleased with how our LA County DA has been running that office. And I don't want to make this a political... Yes, sir. Yeah. He decides how all felony prosecutions in the county of LA are going to be handled or not. Yeah, and that affects us. And again, this isn't political, so, I just encourage you all to learn as much as you can about the DA's race. It's a very important position. But for example, he adopted a policy that if you're caught with a gun, it's an automatic diversion, which means there's no prosecution. And it doesn't matter what you were planning. If you confess, I'm on my way to commit a violent crime with this gun, it doesn't matter, you're going to be diverted, not prosecuted. That's wrong. There needs to be some judgment brought to bear about this stuff. You've read about some of the cases, right, where there was a non-prosecution and then a child is killed or something, So, and look, nobody can guarantee things in life, but there needs to be a change in that office, in my humble opinion. So it's a great question, though. And believe me, if there's a complaint about our city prosecutors, I want to know about it, because I review a lot of their cases. I meet with the city attorney regularly to go through those cases and all, but I think we've got a good office, So, yes, ma'am. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and we have 2 dogs at home, and you can try any jamming device you want on them, and they bark real loud, and I think the idea is at least make it harder, like you want your home to be one that they say, just not, that's not worth it type thing. Okay, any more questions for our police officers? And then I just want to introduce the Rose Bowl team, and then we'll do our raffle. We've got some really cool gifts tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Thank you. Great job. Thank you. So really, I don't know that we'll have much more time tonight than to just introduce the team, but they're very important. Jens Wyden is our CEO. He replaced Daryl Dunn, whose name you may have noticed earlier on the One Arroyo Foundation. He was one of the original participants of that effort. But we have 3 really great leaders. I mean, we're very fortunate. And, I guess I'll start with Deedon Brazino. Deedon, where you at? And I'll ask you to stand up. Deedon, there you are. Deedon is the Chief Development Officer. No, I didn't say you could sit down. Come on, stand up, man. Chief Development Officer. He heads up the legacy effort. You want to talk about a public-private partnership where he's raised tens of millions of dollars to support the Rose Bowl, so that when we come to City Council and say, and I'm on the board of the RBOC, so I know of which I speak, we say we need more resources publicly, or we need some events, we need to come to the neighborhood and say, I know it's a sacrifice, but we need this income to preserve this stadium. He's out there raising private dollars as well, and he's phenomenal. We're very fortunate to have Deedon Brazino on our team. And Derek Doolittle is here. Derek, give a wave. Derek is the general manager of the Rose Bowl and really handles a lot of the management, a lot of the finances, comes to all the board meetings, obviously comes to council regularly, and does a great job as well. And let me just put a plug in right now for just some exciting things. The Olympics were mentioned earlier, I think. We have 2028, we're going to have Olympic events at the Rose Bowl soccer, and we're very excited about that, about being an Olympic city. Again, LA is going to be one of just a handful of cities to have 3 Olympics when it comes back in 28, and Pasadena is going to be a big part of that. We've got obviously UCLA entering the Big Ten. You're going to see some teams from the Midwest and even further that dream about coming to Pasadena on New Year's Day, but they're going to be here earlier in the fall, and it's going to be for sure in the short term, 5 to 10 years. It's going to be a great benefit to the stadium because everybody's going to be fired up when their Big Ten team comes west. So a lot of exciting things there. I mentioned Meredith Thomas. She's the board secretary and really does all the work, let's just be honest, for the group. So Meredith, give a wave, please. Thank you very much. And then the latest addition is someone who's been a longtime friend and colleague of mine and the whole community, Dominic Corey. Dominic was at Learning Works 100 years ago, and then became part of Anthony Portantino's staff, did great work for the senator for many, many years, and now is a great addition to the team at the Rose Bowl. So we'll be sure to have them come back for another more substantive session in the future, but there are really good things that are going to be happening here, and we're excited for all of you. So thank you very much, and thanks for having us tonight.